Bonjour et bienvenue au Paris Peace Forum 2023 pour une conférence qui s'intitule
So, good afternoon to all of you.
The Power of Youth
Their future, their voice, the power of youth in tackling today's challenges. Today, we are here with four youth, for young activists, global young activists, and with Marlène Arnois. And Marlène Arnois, you are an Olympic medalist in Taekwondo, and you have started working in social activities in Western Africa. In 2017, you joined the group Peace and Sport, which is an organization defending sport in order to build a culture of peace. And today, you represent the Club of Peace Champions, with athletes such as Blaise Matuidi, Siakolitsky, Rudy Gobert, basketball player Teke Lorup, Radcliffe, and Kisson Karambo, soccer champion '98. So the first question I would like to ask you is, how can sport contribute to the empowerment and the commitment of youth? Well, sport plays an essential role in the empowerment of youth and in the commitment of youth towards causes, because youth who play sports, they're healthy, they develop their well-being, and I think it's important that well-being and health are the preconditions to our commitment. So, as an Olympic medal winner, I can't tell you how important sport was for my development in my youth. And I do Taekwondo, and Taekwondo promotes values such as respect of your adversaries, solidarity, but also resilience, and it has developed my resilience, and it also inspired my desire to commit to social causes and share what I'm doing with future generations to serve as an inspiration. After I was awarded the medal in London in 2012, I wanted to do something, and I created an association, Côte d'Ivoire. And after that, I extended my activity to Western Africa, and now for the past 8 years, I've been working with peace and sport. And next year, I'll be going to Bogota, Colombia, to meet the local stakeholders there who work to develop programs, implement them, and convey values of peace through sports. So what we do is peace and sports. We really believe that sports allows you to acquire abilities that go far beyond just the playing field, and that apply and can be used in everyday life. That's why we created a methodology, and today we have the Peacemaker Project, which is a program we're developing in the field, and we develop the peace building through sport and the values conveyed by sport, to develop capacity building, to develop the skills and abilities of the beneficiaries. So precisely, can you give us examples of young athletes who use sport to have a positive or to make a positive social impact and raise awareness around them? There are excellent examples in sports, from the creation of our organization. Since the creation of our organization in 2007, stakeholders have always been at the heart of peace and sport through the Champions Club, bringing together champions such as Didier Drogba, Siakolitsky, or Rudy Gobert. And among the examples that I have in mind, from the top of my head, I can mention the Siakolitsky, South African rugby team leader, who uses the platform to promote social cohesion in South Africa, and through his commitment in peace and sport, develop things further. So we have Sheikh Sixte and Ruth Baby, and they serve as an inspiration to the local youth and show the power of sport, because they come from different origins in a country with ethnic strife and many conflicts. So what they show through that is that sport unifies the youth and everybody. And through peace and sports, we create a club of peace champions. See, then many requests from youth who wanted to do something for peace through sports. And among the two best examples I can mention, I have Irina Berezovsky, who was the youngest chess player, 9 years old. She won a medal in the Olympics. She's quite amazing, and she organizes chess contests in order to raise funds for refugees. And I'm thinking of Yasmin Kola in automobile racing, and she supports an orphanage in Uganda. And she participated in the Paris-Dakar last year, and she covered her vehicle with banners mentioning respect, inclusion, and equality, because these are the values that she wanted to champion and have the youth champion themselves. So, Marlene, tell me, how, in your opinion, can sports bridge the gap between generations, and why? Or how can sports find a way towards solving very difficult problems? Well, what is fantastic with sports, what is magical in a way, is that because when you start playing, when you're in the field, there is a spirit of competition, of course, but there's one thing that is essential, is the respect towards other players and your opponents. Sports is a universal language, because everybody follows the same rules, and this creates a level playing field and a space for dialogue. And over and above that, for example, we're going to have the Olympic Games here in Paris in 2024, and sports brings family members together. You can see grandparents going to watch a game in the stadium with their grandchildren. This goes to show that sports bridges all types of gaps that they are between generations or between ethnic groups. We want to use the peace champions in sporting events to serve as an inspiration to other young people to promote the culture of peace through the unifying power of sports. One last question. If you had one recommendation to give to anybody, any young person to use sports or how to use sports in a decision-making process or to make an impact in social matters. Okay, well, I have three recommendations, if you'll allow me. The first and foremost one is to always use sports to convey skills and values that are sustainable. So it's important to train educators and coaches to transmit the right values in the coaching sessions and the sports sessions. And it's particularly important to have a global approach to think whether it's sports for peace or sports for women or sports for inclusion or sports for you name it. All of the positive aspects and virtues of sports. It's important to have cross-cutting programs involving all stakeholders. And for the youth, the most important thing is to include civil society and all of the stakeholders in their projects. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Marlene. We're going to carry on now with our discussion with four young people, four young activists. I'm going to move over to English so we can discuss this all together.
Young leaders. Hila Youn, you're 25. You're coming from Afghanistan. Plun Varges, you're 24. You're coming from Switzerland. Roberto Hernandez Juarez, you're 25, you're coming from Mexico. And Benjamin Mwape, you're 36, and you're coming from Zambia. I'm going to start with you, Hila. You're the founder and director of from the Afghan Youth Ambassador for Peace organization. And I would like to know, as a young global leader, what were the problems you had for hearing your voice as a young person? How did you succeed on being becoming a leader as being so young?
Thank you, and I'm really proud and honored to be here. I had a panel before this, and we were addressing the challenges of young people and what we're facing. And I think for the last 1 day or 2 days, we've been hearing so many challenges that young people are facing around the world, but I want to address one of the key recommendations, because we know about the problems, we always talk about the problems, what's happening, these are the issues, but we need to talk more about the solution, because not everyone is privileged to be at this platform and speak about the young people, especially coming from a conflict-affected countries. And one of the biggest issue I think a young person is facing now is like the loss of hope and interest and that confidence in the political structure of the United Nations and other European councils. Because what's happening in Afghanistan right now, for 2 years, almost girls are completely banned from education, from accessing school. In Gaza, children are dying every day, thousands of children and women. And we're still struggling to have a ceasefire in Gaza, with all the superpower talking about coming to these fancy conferences and talking about peace, and yet we're still struggling what's happening in Gaza and Palestine to even have a ceasefire right now. So at the global level, one of the biggest challenges that me as a young person, but also I think we share this thing as well, is like how to not make this normalized. Because there's war happening in Ukraine, there's war happening in Gaza, there's issues happening in Afghanistan. And then we attend these conferences, we talk and talk and talk, and there's no follow-up. Even like today, one of the other struggles is that we don't have a meaningful engagement with policy leaders. Sometimes it's just young people talking to each other, and we come to these conferences, everyone is busy in their phones, nobody's actually paying attention. And we also don't have enough networking opportunities to actually sit with the policymakers and talk about these issues. But we all know these problems, but what are the solutions, and why it's so important to engage young people? Because we are the agents of change. We come with a lot of energy, a lot of innovating ideas, and we work and strive to make that change, because in most conflict-affected countries, it's the young people who are suffering, and majority of those conflict-affected countries, the populations are young people. But we should also acknowledge the problem that young women are facing when it comes to these challenges. So I want to give a few recommendations, because we do have limited time, and it's really important that we highlight this.
We have time.
The first one is flexible funding. We've been talking about this for ages. It's like, why is UN and European Union, all these big institutions, so bureaucratic? Why you guys are not funding the young people who are making changes on the ground? Please give them enough funding and make it flexible. Second thing is, please avoid selective activism. You can't just have specific opportunities and activism for one country, but then discriminate and censor the other countries because of your own political beliefs that are not aligned with you. Third would be build the capacity of young people, but bring them to these conferences as well. I want everyone to acknowledge the visa discrimination some young people face when we come from a specific country who would have specific religion background. These conferences that we are sitting here is not accessible to everyone, especially the victims on the ground. They don't know what's happening. Here I am talking about Peace Forum and then attending the Peace Forum, talking about this issue. How we can bring these to the local level, and localization is really important. And fourth one is, this is for organizer as well at these conferences, if you're listening. Please provide meaningful networking opportunities for young people who come with the solution, but please sit us with the policymakers so we can talk about these issues. And I want to end my talk with a quote by Mahmoud Darwish, is that we are in a Paris Peace Forum. The wars will end and the leaders will shake hands. And that old woman will remain waiting for her martyred son, and that girl will wait for her beloved husband, and the children will wait for their heroic fathers. I do not know who sold the homeland, but I know who paid the price.
Mahmoud Darwish, the famous Palestinian poet. Plön Varges, you're the Swiss youth representative to the United Nations. I want to know, we're going to talk about your own experience. How difficult is it to be a young leader to the United Nations? Is it like a place where young people can hear their voice?
Thank you very much for the question. I'm very honored to be here as well with such inspiring young leaders. It is an important question to ask. There is definitely youth participation at the UN. So to quickly explain what youth delegates are, so we represent the young people from our countries at the international stage, so at the UN. And we are able to make statements at the General Assembly, to organize side events. So in that sense, I feel like we've been able to contribute to general ideas at the UN and set the agenda on specific themes that are important for the future. But when it comes to decision-making processes, this is very different.
It's harder.
It is more difficult, and we face some barriers. When we look at the main decision-making body of the UN, which is the Security Council, there are very limited possibilities of involvement of young people. And we talked a lot at this forum about the need to reform multilateralism. And if we're serious about this, I believe that youth inclusion is a central factor in such a reform. Which could involve consultation with young people, because I think there's a great potential. Youth delegates and young people tend to work very well together. This is even confirmed by studies that young people are very inclined internationally and to collaborate internationally, and this is in dire need at the moment at the Security Council. So I see a great potential for young people having more spaces at the Security Council, for example. And then also what you mentioned, sometimes the lack of continuity or follow-up with youth engagement. At the General Assembly, for example, we can make statements, but then we need to take these statements in working sessions, and young people need to be included in these working sessions, in these commissions, so that there's results and transparency to where these statements go, and so these are two factors I think that could really reinforce youth engagements at the UN. And last point, of course, it's representation. At the General Assembly, where I have approximately 90 countries represented, which is great, but it's still less than half of the countries that are represented at the General Assembly. So here we need granting schemes, financing to allow more people to be involved at the UN.
So I have a question. If the United Nations have to change something to get more representation for young people, what could they do? Precisely?
I think one question with the United Nations is often accessibility. From the outside, it seems like this black box. And once we discussed this as well together, once you're in the UN, you realize how you can change things. But if you're not aware of how the system works, it's very difficult as young people to access it. So I would ask the UN to create more accessibility, to go to young people, even it can be class visits, but that young people are aware of points of entry, because what we've seen in the past is that often young people that come outside the UN system bring a change of thinking, of paradigm, and can change things inside the UN.
Benjamin Mwape, you're from Zambia, said it, you're 36, and you're a youth and partnerships expert for the African Union and European Union Cooperation Hub. I'd like to know first if you agree with what all Ila and Plun just said before, first.
Totally. Yeah.
And then I would like that we talked in the backstage, and you said you had one thing, I would say like experiences you achieved and you wanted to share with us.
Absolutely, thank you so much. So let me start by saying that if we don't meet the current development challenges, whether it's the sustainable development goals, whether it's the commitments around climate action, young people are going to pay the greatest price.
Yeah.
The next generation of leaders will pay the greatest price for every development commitment that won't be met. And so what we need now is the sense of agency to not just bring young people to the table for consultations, but to bring young people concretely to the table as part of the solution and not just ticking a box. And that is what the AU-EU Youth Cooperation Hub has been demonstrating. The Hub is a multi-stakeholder platform that has brought together young leaders from Africa, Europe, and the diaspora to think and act together in resolving some of the most pressing global development challenges. They've done this around 7 thematic areas, and one of them is environment and climate change. And through the climate change project, the young people designed a project that is being implemented in the Sahel region, in Burkina Faso and in Niger, to be able to empower young people and women to participate in the afforestation initiatives and regreening the Sahel region. And we've seen tremendous results and impact through that over 1,400 young people and women have been empowered and equipped with skills, with knowledge, and with the tools to be able to participate in using natural methods of afforestation within the region. And this has impacted, currently it's impacted about 200 hectares of land that they've been able to do. It is not just contributing to the afforestation agenda, but it also has a socio-economic impact on the young people themselves and on the women as well. There's an innovation technology aspect of it as well that the young people have brought in, the cryptocurrency mechanisms that will be used for the payment and ecosystem payment systems that will be used around that as well. Now, this is a demonstration of what can be possible when young people act and think together.
Yeah.
But let me say this, that there's some lessons we've learned there, that we need to go just beyond involving young people in the design of the projects. We now need to take it a step further. As we talk about scaling up, as we talk about building beyond such initiatives, we now need to ensure that young people are sitting at the table throughout the entire cycle. So they're part of the consultations in the designing, or they're part of the designing. They should be part of the implementation. They should be part of the monitoring and accountability, and they should be able to also be part of the sustainability aspect of it. There are many initiatives that are being developed by big multilaterals, big organizations, but most of these lack the sustainability aspect. So there's young people engaged in silos, one of time, but then that doesn't build to the other thing, and that doesn't speak to each other. So there's really a need for us to bring synergy around this and converge young people together and be able to accelerate progress.
So my question will be, how hard is it to scale that and to be able to scale that all over the world? How do you, I think you have to have a lot of discussion with all the other young global leaders.
Absolutely. I think one of the things for me is going back to what my colleague said, allow young people to own the process. Let them be at the driving seat. I think that we still have a challenge that some of the consultations and some of the engagement of young people, when we talk about youth participation, youth engagement, a lot of it still remains tokenistic. It's ticking a box, young people were there, young people participated, but we now need to push the resources to where the action really needs to happen, and it's at the grassroots. It's empowering young people concretely to own the solutions, but also providing them the resources to be able to push it forward, and that will be one of the ways to actually replicate and ensure that there's sustainability around the initiatives that young people are doing.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. Roberto Hernandez Suarez, you're coming from Mexico. You're 25 too, and like Hila. And I would like to know if there's, like Benjamin said, if you had like a particular experience to share with us, and if you can tell us how did you succeeded in scaling it.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for taking the time to be part of this important conference. And I take one of the first comments that you said. This is our space, and what a conference and what a question, like our future, our decision. And I've been asking myself how and what can I share, and I was like hearing other conversation along these 2 days, and I see that we have this narrative about a future, but I don't know what future are we talking about, because we see already the loss and damage. We already seen the impacts of generation, not just one children, not just one story, but multiple generations of youth people around the world suffering the effects not only of war and conflict, but also climate change. And I wanted to highlight that on this space so important. Also, we talk about representation, diversification. We need to talk about the next generation. We need to talk about the children, the infants, the girls, the women. We need to talk about with people with disabilities. We need to talk about the LGBTQ community. We need to talk about migrants and how all these problems is affecting them, and how we can generate solutions and projects, and how we empower these projects. Because I was talking that with Hila, what's next? That's a big question that we ask about this forum and the activities that we're doing. What's really next? And I think there's a lot of things going on, but to give some solutions, I think with definitely need to change the legislation. We need to change the politics where it's needed. We need to create more spaces, more funding to execute those projects. And as they say, I think this is a clear example that we also need a new social contract that addresses this topic. It's the 75th anniversary this year of the Human Declaration, the Declaration of Human Rights, and yet here we are again talking about the same problems. It's the halfway there campaign for the Sustainable Development Goals, and yet we're discussing about budgeting ahead of COP28. We keep discussing about concepts like loss and damage that yet has not funding. So I think about the next generation, again, going to the beginning of this conversation, or future or decisions. What future? That's a real question. We are building here. We need to have those partnerships, those collaboration, and I am thankful for this space, but definitely we need to go and see beyond the picture. There was a beautiful comment that I heard yesterday that we were used to see war, but only black and white, but now we see it on these devices every day, on tweets, social media, and this bombarding, also information overload like every day, but we're seeing it on real life, and that's what we really need to talk about, how those interdisciplinarities and how it's affecting everyone. So just to say and end this short intervention, we need to decontaminate, we need to talk about degrowth, we need to talk about decarbonization, because those are the real challenges. Those are the real problems that we are not facing and we are only discussing, but yet we have not addressed. We need a new social contract for the people, for the children, and for the next generation that's focused on them and it's not focused on profit.
Thank you very much. We have some time left, so I would like to ask each of you a question. I would like to know, who are your models? I know that you, like you said, you have to build as young people. You have to build what you're going to propose to do. But I'd like to know if in your your different backgrounds, who are the people you're inspired by? Maybe we can start with you, Hila.
I think everyone's inspiration comes from their family first, because that's our first learning place. I think my inspiration comes from my mom, but also from my people. I think Afghans are the most resilient people on earth at this point. For more than 4 decades of war and still continuous problems that we face, and that we're still doing what we can do. My inspiration comes from my mom, because my mom and dad, that's why how I got into peace building, because peace is so linked to everything, whether it's education, anything we're doing, peace is the priority. My mom and dad, they both lived through the Civil War. My mom was shot during the Civil War. Unfortunately, she survived. So every time she was talking about the stories of how millions of people dying, and then war is never a solution to anything. And when I said, like, okay, when I first talk about peace and stuff, I always had this idea as like, okay, peace is absence of war and not terrorist attacks. But peace has such a broader term. So like, for Afghans, peace is also access to education, access to having that quality life, basic access to healthcare and quality education. And one of the things that always inspired me a lot to still continue my work that I do, because honestly, like as a young person, and then seeing what's happening in so many countries, and then you see this injustice and selective approach to every situation, it kind of makes you depressed. And sometimes you're like, okay, I need optimism in my life, but not cheap optimism. It's not like everything is not rainbow. And then the more we work in this field of humanitarian aid and UN organization, we've seen the realities and how many layers you need to like unpack. I think one of the inspiration I get a lot, obviously I mentioned my family, but also the work I do, because every time I work in Afghanistan on the ground, I see real change makers. Like the way they're doing is so lack of resources. One of the example I can provide is that the first time we did a peace building dialogue in Afghanistan, this was with religious leaders and tribal leaders, and we wanted to advocate for girls' education from Islamic perspective. And we invited all these people, and we invited young women. And they had so much knowledge, because in Islam, the first word is iqra, means read. And the first woman who established a university was a Muslim woman. So it shows how Islam promotes education and how we can use that to actually work on education and work these religious leaders. But those women with such a limited resources, had that knowledge, and I can still see they have hope for the future and what they want to do and how they want to build Afghanistan. And that hope is still here. But what I want to talk and want to encourage everyone to just please don't normalize what's happening in Afghanistan, what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in Sudan, what's happening in Ukraine. Don't become so numb to all the problems that we're facing, because we're always on social media consuming so much information. Then we attend these forums and we all work in the humanitarian sector, and you work in journalist sector. You know what it feels like.
Yes.
Sometimes you're like, which problem I should tackle first, because there are just too many. And then we kind of became numb and it became normalized to us. It's okay, war happens anyway. And this normalization is the biggest pandemic we have right now. Don't normalize what's happening. There are literally children dying. There are literally humanitarian crises are happening in every country. Let's take small action, small step. This is not for the UN organization or European Union or big NGOs. It's each of us individually right now, sitting at this table, all of us. Make individual choices that can benefit and make someone's life better. Donate, raise awareness as much as you can. Even if you're small, if you have small capacity, you can actually bring a lot of changes, because collectively we can make a change. Thank you.
Plone, I got the same question for you. Who has inspired you the most for your...
I think I join you as well in saying that what has inspired me a lot, since I'm also a youth delegate, are the young people I see around me and I work with almost every day, that give a lot of hope, because I see a lot of activism around me when I work with young people. And also, when we work in the multilateral system in the UN, it's easy to actually lose hope and see the barriers and what we've seen, of course, with the current conflicts, that decisions are not made like how we would like to make them. And then seeing that young people always topple these or prioritize these values of inclusivity and leaving no one behind, and this is true. I've discussed it with so many young people around me. And this is just very, very inspiring in different fields, and this, it makes it worth it to go ahead with this work with young people.
Roberto, would you have an inspiring example of people or group of people for me?
Yes, I'm trying to keep myself together, because I think my personal inspiration is my little inner child. I didn't choose to be an activist. I didn't choose to do activism for Earth, but I've seen so many things. When I talk about youth, when I talk about children, I think it's nature what really keeps me keen to see the animals, to see how resilient nature really is, and besides how we treating them for years and how we treating people, and we're treating them like things. So I think that's what really keeps me together. I'm not white, I'm not rich, I don't come from the global north. So it's been a really hard way. I'm sorry. But definitely people like Hila, Greta Thunberg, Malala Yousafzai, Mia Motley, Amanda Gorman, those will be the women, also my family. But there are so many examples of people that's resilient, that go against the river and keep fighting for human rights, that keep fighting for the truth and for peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roberto. Benjamin, I'm sure you have models and people who have inspired you. Who would they be?
For purposes of this conversation, I'm going to pick my mentors. Those that were able to see potential in me and gave me a chance to sit at the table and invested in me. And I think that's important, because every young person deserves that. And the reason why I bring this conversation to the table is because when we deal with the subject of youth participation, youth in leadership, we still have a segment of society that has a stereotype attached to young people. Young people are seen as inexperienced, incompetent, and all these negative stereotypes delays the opportunities for young people to participate concretely in accelerating development progress. And so we need to change that narrative and be able to see young people from the perspective of their potential. I come from a continent where over half of the population are young people, the largest, population of young people in the history of Africa. In some sectors, that is seen as a problem. But yet we are sitting on a huge opportunity that can make significant progress happen on the continent. So for me, when I look at my mentors, I see that they were able to see potential, harnessed it, and gave it an opportunity to blossom. And I think as we speak about empowering young people to sit at the table and become concrete drivers of development and change, we need to first start by seeing them from the positive lens of their potential and give them the opportunity to sit at the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Plon, you mentioned the social media as a weapon. Do you all consider social media as a weapon? I think it's very useful for you, but in what way do you also fear social media? Can you develop on that and talk to me about your relationship to social media, Plon, for example?
Yes, I definitely think social media is a weapon and can bring collaboration between young people. But I am personally worried at the moment to the extent social media can take over many spheres of our lives, and also related to the current conflict that we see. It's unprecedented how exposed we are to blatant human rights violations, and here I see a danger for young people as well. This has not been studied yet, and we don't know how far this goes, but it cannot be good that young people are so exposed to this violence, and it can easily lead to, I think, again, a loss of hope in our system to see that it is not working, and here I think there will come some change in the next coming years of maybe some regulations with regard to this, because at the moment we're very, very exposed, and it's not healthy for our mental health.
Benjamin, do you agree with that?
Well, I like to see social media as a neutral tool. That it really depends, in and of itself it's a neutral tool. It really depends in whose hands it is in. And so what we probably need to focus on is not really deal with the social media itself, but deal with mindset transformation. Because then when we have the right people with the right mindset in terms of how they can use social media, it becomes a very instrumental, positive tool that can be used to harness peace globally, to be able to accelerate development, exchange ideas, and so on. So for me, the work is, especially when we are talking about young people, we need to then be able to invest in terms of their mindset, invest in terms of their education, and through that, we then will have a cadre of young people that have got the right perspective to how they want to approach life and what they want to do to contribute to the development of their communities, of their country, and of the globe, as it were. And then they can use social media in a very positive way to advance that progress. Yeah.
Roberto, what's your relationship to social media?
Yes, I'm actually a TikTok ambassador for Latin America, specifically for climate action and climate emergency. I think social media is actually an amazing platform where we can spread the word, we can share the actions, we can spread our projects or ideas, but it's also a knife with double conflict. When we say, talking about the forum, when we say conflict, the beginning in Ukraine and Russia, there were young people demanding their accounts back. Their accounts were banned. Their accounts were eliminated. Their messages, their posts, their stories were eliminated because there's censorship in social media. We need to regulate social media. We need to regulate AI. We need to regulate artificial intelligence, but we also need to make sure that our human rights as free speech is guaranteed and respect in all social media platforms, not only TikTok, but all social media platforms. We also need to fight misinformation, and UN Secretary General shared this on UNGA. One of the biggest problems right now to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and to achieve the climate emergency, it's the misinformation and conspiracy theories around all these agendas. So we really need to to fight those messages. And I think that challenges goes by each country, how they regulate, how we reunite and talk about these challenges. But also, the platforms, how are they being pushing their agenda on, freedom of speech, also other problems that you both mentioned, anxiety and depression on youth. Those are effects of excess of social media and censorship. So I think it's a unique platform. I think it's a platform that we got to take and have to embrace to make our own. But yet there's another agenda parallel of peace building that is on social media creation, definitely.
Hila, I would like to know how much you consider social media as a weapon, or what is your relationship to social media?
I think as an activist and from Gen Z, I think social media is part of our life. I think I see it in a way because if you give human being anything, they will use it either in bad way or good way. So it's not just social media. Like religion has been used in a good way or a bad way. So I think for me, I have to keep looking at social media as a way to connect and amplify the voices of young people, because that's like my line of work. But at the same time, addressing what this is causing, and everything comes from lack of awareness and education at the end of the day. If we talk about it, there are different generations using different social media platform in a different way. Like the spread of misinformation is something that we have to tackle as soon as possible, because now, previously war was on the ground, now war is on social media platforms. And especially if you're a peace activist and any activist working in any field, I think we often don't recognize how much these social media spaces are actually safe for us at the same time. You either get cyberbullied, you get a lot of threat you get on social media, but at the end of the day, if you're working on a cause, you can use social media to your advantage as well. But I want to also highlight that using social media and acknowledging the digital divide in some countries, not many people even have access to social media platform, and they still hear from misinformation that are spreading everywhere, and radicalization are still happening both on the digital platform and on traditional way or non-digital platform as well. And for me, just to summarize it, at the end of the day, we need to adapt very quickly, because using social media platform, and especially hold these big corporations accountable, because there is no legal binding. Because if Facebook or Twitter or Meta or any platform is using, at the end of the day, just want to make money. So if they are giving this platform and using this for misinformation, we should tackle more on how we can actually hold them accountable. And to just summarize it again, at the end of the day, it's up to us to build that self-awareness and educate ourselves on how to use social media platform wisely. Please raise awareness, take courses on how to detect misinformation, because the government have policies and limited funding. They cannot educate the whole population, so it's up to us to educate ourselves at the end of the day at the same time.
We have 3 minutes left. We are at the end of year 2023. I would like to know in a few words, what is your personal goal for 2024? I'm going to start with you, Benjamin.
I think for me, I'm at the place where I have been actively involved in a lot of youth work. I would like to commit to giving more in building the next generation of young people that can also have similar opportunities such as me. So I'm going to be investing a lot in passing on some of the experiences and lessons to other young people and creating opportunities for other young people to rise. Thank you.
Plön.
I will continue my mandate as a youth delegate and continue pushing for real youth participation instead of tokenism, like we mentioned, and be loud on the obstacles we face when it comes to youth participation.
Roberto, any goal for 2024 yet?
Yes, definitely achieving the SDGs, spreading the word, planting the seed, really pushing the sustainable development goals, and changing the system, definitely. Believing in something that it's for the people and not for profit.
Hila, we're going to finish with you. So what will be your goal for 2024?
It's a very broad question, though. For me, as a youth envoy, I obviously focus on sustainable development goal, but mainly focus on localizing those goals at the ground. And one other thing is this is something like prioritizing your mental health, because we all work in a field, it's very overburn, like we burn out very quickly. So starting the self-care with yourself, like work on yourself, build that inner peace for yourself, and then spread that peace around the world at the same time, because everything starts with you. So if you are working on sustainable development goal, climate change, tackling big social issues, everything you're doing, make sure you have a balance between and set boundaries for yourself, how much you can take, because usually as a humanitarian workers and activists, we're too empathetic. There's a lot of empathy we have, and there's a lot of things we feel too much. That's important that have a balance between self-care, giving that care and empathy for yourself and others at the same time.
Thank you very much. I was very proud of being the host of this spotlight, and I wish you a cool stay in Paris for the next few days, and I was very happy to be with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.